Well, a lot of people watched the draft this week and saw all of the players getting drafted, none from Georgia Tech, which is kind of astonishing, actually. One first rounder for the Gators, and then just a steady stream of Georgia players, Amarius Mims and Brock in the first round. Lai McConkey narrowly missing out on the first round. And it just goes to show, again, when people ask, why is it so difficult to beat Georgia? Some of it's the players, some of it's the coaches, a lot of it's both. And I think that the thing that I would say more than anything is there is a consistent method to the madness at Georgia. And, I think we saw Michigan do a really good job these last few years. I've talked about how good Michigan was, but nobody's been like Georgia this decade. I mean, you've had four national champions crowned, two of them were Georgia. And I don't see Alabama or Michigan winning it this year, although they both are certainly right on top of it. Um, Georgia and Ohio State are going to be the two folks that people really pay attention to when it comes down to national championship. So why is Georgia so difficult? Well, a lot of it is they do a great job of planning to be successful. That's step number one in being successful is planning to be successful. What do I mean by that? Well, going out and getting Ladd McConkey, going out and getting uh, you know quarterbacks. And the biggest thing that's been powering Georgia lately have been really good quarterbacks who have been surrounded by really good teams, really good playmakers. I mean, you look at Carson Beck is entering his fifth season at Georgia. They re-recruited Stetson Bennett. He won them two national championships. They were ready with Jake Fromm. They weren't just going to depend on any one person, including any one quarterback. So it's a lot of different things, but it's really consistency more than anything else. When you look at Florida this decade, they've not been consistent. They've been consistently bad, if you want to call it that, but I'm talking about being consistently good. When you take a look at Alabama, they're not even close to as consistent as they once were. I mean, Nick leaving is going to be. I mean, everybody thinks it's going to be bad, but perhaps there's going to be new consistency for the Tide. I mean, I don't know. That's hard to really believe, but Kalen DeBoer gets his shot to do that. Ohio State has been really consistent. Actually, they've been very good over time. Texas perhaps is coming up in the world. There's all sorts of folks that are going to be a challenge or could be a challenge for Georgia, and we're just going to have to see how this goes. But I think the hardest thing for anyone defeating Georgia is you can look at the team and say, well, they've kind of got a weakness here or they've got a weakness there. Do they? I mean, it's weak within reason. It's not some obvious thing where they don't have a starting quarterback. No, that's not it. And then you saw a week ago, you're adding, arguably, I wouldn't say I mean, I don't know, it might be the best transfer quarterback in the portal, and that's up for debate probably. I would say that's probably not true, but for the future, it might be true. They just no stone is unturned, none, and it's a program that over time we've really hit a Y here for Georgia in the road. Is this going to become more difficult because of the situation, or less difficult because of the situation? And the situation is this: as usual, college football has changed. You've got, Jim Harbaugh and Nick Saban, the only two head coaches who have won national championships this decade. They're gone. They're gone. That leaves Kirby Smart. The only other guy since 2018, or really the only person besides Mac Brown that's won a national championship that's remaining, is Dabo Swinney, and they're going to be a two-touchdown underdog in Georgia in the start of the season. So is it easier because Nick's not around? I mean, in theory, the problem is the Y in the road. We don't know what this playoff's going to be like. I mean, you know, that's going to be the most. I mean, is Georgia going to win the SEC championship? I mean, are they going to eat a loss along the way? Even if they do, are they going to? Is their loss going to be in the SEC championship game, or is it going to be on the road at Texas, and then they win in Atlanta? I mean, like, what's the what's what's the situation going to be when you get to the playoff? I don't know the answer to that, and nobody does. That's the problem. And then, of course, I think the biggest thing lingering out there is, I mean, Ohio State at some point has got to win the national championship. That's my take. I mean, I didn't think that Michigan necessarily had to, But considering that Georgia was not in the playoff, it was Michigan's time to win it, or it wasn't going to happen. I mean, clearly, because Jim Harbaugh was going to leave, and already I think to some degree you're seeing some kinks in the armor at Michigan. But balancing those two things, along with they have the best program in the country, like that's not really up for debate. I don't think. I mean, who else would be better right now? I mean, you argue Texas is better than Georgia. They're not. I mean, you can have the argument. You want to argue Ohio State is. They don't have the national championships. Does that make them the better program or not? I mean, I don't think it necessarily. I don't think winning national championships is the definitive guide to, or the determinative thing as to who is the best. But it's a pretty good. I mean, like, they're keeping score for a reason, and I think that that's something that for a long time hurt Georgia. Now, not so much. And by the way, it's so entertaining to see the Alabama folks on here talking about how Kirby was 1-5 against Nick Saban. Yeah, one of those was a pretty important game for the national championship. I mean, two of those 6 games were national championship games. They split them, and the problem for the Alabama trolls is Nick Saban's not walking back through that door. We don't know what Ken Lindeborg is going to be like. I think he's going to be pretty good, but I mean, pretty good has gotten you fired at Alabama. So we just don't know. And I'm going to let the motorcycles go by. Obviously, I'm on location here. But it's going to be curious to see what the future's like. But I think that even though this is a very difficult schedule for Georgia, no question about that part. No question about that part. At Texas, at Alabama, nevertheless, at Ole Miss, and you got the usual suspects with Tennessee and Auburn coming to Athens. I mean, those should, one of those two will be a real challenging game, if not both. Obviously, you kick off the season with Clemson, and you've got Florida, and we'll see what happens with Georgia Tech as time goes on. I think he is a much better program runner than Jeff Collins ever thought about being. So it doesn't get easier for Georgia, if you want to call it that. That's not what's going to happen. It doesn't seem like it, at least. But again, I wouldn't be talking like this a year ago, because we knew what the future would look like. We knew that it involved, at that point, Nick Saban. It involved a 14 playoff. That's just where we were at in college football. Now, I mean, it's just so much harder to know for sure. Oh, this is definitely what we're doing. I don't know. Like, who is the quarterfinal going to be against for Georgia? But back to the subject, why is it so difficult to beat them? Because they take Lad McConkey from Tennessee Chattanooga, and they make him a virtual first round draft pick. They take Brock Bowers from California when I wouldn't say nobody was looking, but we didn't know how good Brock Bowers was. I'm just going to tell you that right now. Like, as Matt DeBerry put it to me, this was off camera. He said, I thought he was really good. I didn't realize he was an alien. And guys like Darnell, we thought Darnell at Washington was really good, and it turns out he was. So it's all of that, and the offensive line recruiting has just been really good. It's retaining the right players too. Saw Christian Miller, thought about going. I don't know if it was to SC or where, but then he just backed away. Why did he back away? Why? I think he's a good player. I don't know if he's unbelievable, but he's another cog in the wheel, and that's what you got to be. You've got to constantly have those guys, and when you have that, you can develop, because you're not just saying, okay, we have 4 defensive linemen, they're going to have to get it done. That's going to be exhausting in a big game. That's going to be exhausting in a big game. Christian Miller, and this is not a film about Christian Miller. Christian Miller flashed. Like, he flashed. Now, he wasn't there, like, all the time, but he flashed. I mean, those are the type of guys that can really be good players over time. So he flashed, and we'll just see what his future will be. But they're making sure that sort of the right players are around. They're managing the scholarship number, but it's Kirby is extremely interested and invested in winning at Georgia. That's pretty clear. If you know some of the stuff behind the scenes, it was pretty evident, a while ago, not lately. They do a great job of developing themselves as a staff, getting coaches at other schools, Del McGee, Sam Pittman, Shane Beamer, Dan Lanning. Dan Lanning has got one of the top 10 programs in the country, top 7, maybe top 5 this year, looking like they certainly should be in the semifinals, Oregon. But they're taking all that intellectual power in terms of football, and they're putting it on top of their players and saying, hey, just go out and compete right now. Go out and win. The price is going to be way harder than games. Just go out and make it happen. That's the formula. It's working. Thanks for watching.